It is exercise, immunity, and rheumatic diseases. To the hundreds of questions in our mind, we always turn to our Google friend to find the solution. And with the current COVID scenario, the questions have definitely increased. So here we are today with the expert panel to answer all your questions. Today we have with us Dr. Ambrish, Professor in Physiology at MS Ramaya Medical College, Dr. Chandrasekhar, Medical Director and Consultant Rheumatologist at Chandra Rheumatology and Immunology Center, Dr. Praveen Kumar, Consultant Rheumatologist at Chandra Rheumatology Center, and Dr. Raj Kannan, he's a Senior Physiotherapist at Chandra Rheumatology Center. I welcome you all. My first question is to Dr. Ambrish. So there is a lot of confusion amongst the general population and even amongst us that doing regular physical activity and exercise, is it same? Like women tend to tell us that they do a lot of household activity. Men tell us that they do a lot of standing. Farmers say they do a lot of physical activity. Is that same as doing exercise? What are your thoughts on this, sir?
Dr. Shruti Paramashetty, given the circumstances in the present day, especially, your question is very apt. And at the outset, I have to tell that both are totally different. Exercises as prescribed by the medical professionals or the healthcare professionals is necessary. We cannot compromise saying that, okay, I am doing household work or I'm working as a, for example, I am a teacher and I stand for hours together and walk on the dais and also do some research work or treat patients, for example. No, this will not suffice. We have to do walking. Even in walking, we have to do brisk walking, the aspects of which will be dealt with later. But what I am also emphasizing is that all parts of the body will not get exercised at all in the household work. In the present scenario, of course, it is the women folk who seem to be spending more, expending more of calories because they do kitchen work and also work from home and take care of the household chores. But even then, it will not suffice. All of us have to do physical activity in the form of at least walking, though swimming is the prescribed best form of exercise, and all of us will not be able to do that until and unless we have a river flowing in our backyard. We cannot afford to go out as often as before, and walking is the best because it exercises all the muscles of the human body. Okay, that is the important thing, and brisk walking is important. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. My next question is to Dr. Chandrasekhar. Sir, how does exercise influence our health? How is it different from the routine physical activity that we do?
When we talk of a routine physical activity, normally the routine physical activity of when you are working or when you are doing some job, whether it is physical or mental, your attention is more on the work that you are executing. And second critical point that we need to remember is that we have a target when we are at a work. See, as Ambrish was telling, I have a patient to see, I run towards him, and I have something to do. I sit and do some of the jobs. In all these, we don't exercise every part of our muscles. Everything are not synchronized or work together. So we give more attention to the work in front rather than on our body and moving every joints and every muscles. And when it comes to exercise, it's a pattern, rhythm. There is a system in which you have been suggested to walk or suggested to do the exercise or suggested to do a physical activity. I always try to compare, you may have a syntax, whether you put it in a way you sing, whether you are going to read it, it's going to make a lot of difference on impact on the mind. So also are the exercise. A rhythmic, systematic movement has totally a different impact on the human body, vis-a-vis compared to a physical activity or a physical exercise which is not regular or not sequential or doesn't involve every part of it. How does it helps or influences the mind or the body is, it keeps you fit. It helps in adopting a lot of functioning of the cardiovascular system, muscular system, and so on and so forth. Thereby, it keeps health in most appropriate state or appropriate scenarios.
Thank you, sir. My next question is to Dr. Raj Kannan. Sir, there are different types of exercises like yoga, aerobic exercises. Can you tell us different types of exercises and how do we choose a specific form of exercise for ourselves?
Okay. Yeah. So when it comes to exercise, different people think different thing as exercise, but there is no universal consensus of yes, this is what is aerobic, this is what is anaerobic. So I think it is better if we have a general understanding of what is the common classification of the exercise, so that we know which exercise can be prescribed to which age group, which group of population or subgroup of the population. So for that, I would like to show a few classifications of these exercises. If you see here, the exercises are classified into two broad categories based on what kind of macronutrition that you use during a given exercise. So we all know that aerobic exercise, we all know anaerobic exercise, but what exactly is aerobic, anaerobic, and what are the subcomponents of anaerobic, we need to understand. So once we know this, then based on the need, we will be choosing the aerobic or anaerobic exercise to the given population. So we all know that aerobic means it's generally cardio type of exercise. Doesn't mean that only heart is working, but when the heart itself is working, that is understood that every other system is working. Hence, it's called as cardio. In fact, it should be called as cardiorespiratory. So this cardio or endurance type of exercise are long duration in activity. That's why people say marathon is a type of cardio, because they run 42 kilometers and it's happening for about 2 to 3 hours. So these types of exercise are specific in terms of fat loss, because fat is a major nutrition that is used for aerobic form of exercise. And people who want to lose weight, they have to engage in this type of aerobic form of exercise. Apart from that, they'll get systemic benefits, because when we are doing aerobic exercise, not only your heart is getting benefited, even your lungs, your skeletal system, your muscles, even your hormonal systems, even your psychological systems are all getting benefited with this aerobic form of exercise. What are the types? What are the examples of that? Are like it can be from mild to walking, gentle walking to a brisk walking to the jogging up to marathon running. So we have various grades of aerobic exercise which we can prescribe based on the given body type of the individual, age of the individual, and its given disease condition. Sometimes for arthritis patients, we give aerobic exercise. Unfortunately, they will not be able to walking or jogging, so we make them cycling as a form of exercise. So this is called as aerobic exercise, which is long duration in nature, which is fat in terms of energy expenditure, useful for weight loss, especially for people after their pregnancy and the delivery, the weight that they gain, and it's also good for systemic benefits. Whereas if you see the anaerobic form of exercise, there are so many subcomponents of anaerobic exercise, but anaerobic exercise is nothing but an exercise which you do for short duration in nature. Like you see, people go to gym and then do barbell press, dumbbell press, they do gymnastics. So these are all short duration activity, which are mainly intended for gaining muscle mass, and which doesn't really spend a lot of energy. And people who want to work on their biceps, they use biceps curl to build their biceps. So anaerobic exercise will help in improving your muscle mass as well. So what are the subtypes of anaerobic exercise? Is you see here, these are the subtypes of anaerobic exercise, where no strength training fall under anaerobic exercise. Mobility, I mean stretching and flexibility exercise will fall under the anaerobic exercise. You know, yoga form comes under anaerobic. Even though yoga is mainly for stretching in nature, still you have to use parts of muscle group to do a bodily movement. Hence, it comes under anaerobic exercise. And we give balance and coordination exercise for old age people, or people who have cerebral lesions or Parkinsonism or stroke, post-stroke. We give balance and coordination exercise. And people who are playing sports, plyometric and agility exercise we'll be giving. And last but not the least, this HIIT, shortly called as HIIT exercise. The acronym stands for high intensity interval training. This is very good in terms of short period weight loss program, which is a combination of high intensity bursts of interval training, where they try to lose their body weight at the same time improve their strength. So these are the subvarieties of anaerobic exercise. All right. So these exercises are given based on the given need. For example, people with the RA hand, we will be giving more of flexibility exercise to the hand. People who are having ONE will be giving aerobic exercise to preserve their systemic or the cardiac fitness. So depends upon the given instances, we choose the exercise. Then this is little bit technical. Patients may not really have to know this, but based on the types of muscle contraction, some exercises are called as concentric, some are called as eccentric, some are called as isometric. For example, people who cannot bend their knees but still want to maintain the integrity of the quadriceps muscle, we give isometric form of exercise. So these are the types of muscle contractions which can be used in the physiotherapy setup based on the given instances we choose. So to cover it in the nutshell, the exercises are broad, aerobic, anaerobic, aerobic, long duration, anaerobic or short duration, and anaerobic has so many other subvarieties like high intensity interval training, yoga, flexibility, balance training, and strength training, plyometrics, and so on.
Thank you, sir. My next question is to Dr. Praveen. Sir, in our center, we do educate and insist our patients to do regular exercises. What are your views on in rheumatological disease patients? Does exercise help in better outcome of the disease?
Yeah, definitely exercise helps in better outcome of in rheumatological disease. As you see in general, healthy individual, how the exercise help to decrease the risk of cardiovascular disease, and also decreases the risk of hypertension, and also decreases adipose tissue, which is nothing which causes obesity. So it has a very good effect on these aspects in a general population. And if you see in our patient rheumatology, especially in rheumatoid arthritis and ankylosing spondylitis, we have a higher risk for cardiovascular risk. And rheumatoid arthritis is equivalent to diabetes in causing a cardiovascular death. So considering all this, exercises helps in decrease of the this adipose tissue, and also increases the muscle mass, and also decreases the bone loss, which either may be due to the disease per se or due to the steroids which we give, which causes a bone loss and a muscle loss. So it decreases all this, and also it improves the pain, stiffness, and improves the mobility. As already Dr. Kannan has explained different types of the exercise. So these exercises will reduces the pain, stiffness, and mobility, and decreases the bone loss, and also the muscle improves the muscle strength, thereby decreasing the weight bearing, weight transmitted to the joint, keeping the joint mobile and in a good range of motion. So considering all this, it's definitely plays an important role in the management of the rheumatoid arthritis, along with our DMARD medication, which we give to control the inflammation or disease activity. So definitely exercise plays a very important role in the control of the disease activity, and also improving the physical activity, and also the psychological well-being. And also explained about aerobic exercises, which also increases the breathing function, and also improves the psychological well-being and the physical health.
Thank you, sir. My next question is to Dr. Chandrasekhar. Sir, how does exercise influence the immune system? Is there something like if we do exercise, our immune system stabilizes or it boosts? Is there something like that, sir? What is your thought on it?
Certainly, the exercises has an influence with reference to even the immune system functioning. See, earlier days, we always used to think that if you do a real good exercise, your cardiovascular system improves, cardiovascular toning increases. So your heart rate comes down, your overall circulating system also improves. It was very hard for any one of us who know the immune system, because immune system is a sort of number of cells which are spread across. You have neutrophils, lymphocytes, you have the proteins, you have complements, which are not something like a synchronized system. If you see the system, it is like small particulate matters which are separate. It was very hard for us, anyone, to think that, yes, when you do a regular exercise, when you do a good physical activity, there is an influence on the immune system response. I mean, when we were working in, as when I was a professor at MS Ramaiah, we were trying to work on how these physical activity influences health and does it really make a change with reference to the immune system functioning. We did realize that when a person who has a regular physical exercises, physical activity, vis-a-vis compared to an individual who don't do a regular physical exercise or activities, his response of what we call as inflammation, which is a response which occurs with proteins like TNF and all those things. I think now most of us are aware about what we call cytokine storm, because with COVID has sensitized, I think made lot of immunologists now, because it has been so much of publication has come that there is something called cytokine storm which kills a COVID patients. What really happens is when an immune system tries to respond to an external stimuli, it is this TNF and IL-6 and these are the cytokines which are secreted to respond to that. We found that when you do a regular exercise, there is an adequate control that is exercised on the way we respond with TNF and IL-6. We compared a person in an athlete who regularly do an exercise vis-a-vis our medical students who regularly don't do this exercise. We did find that the people who do a regular exercise have a well-controlled, well-balanced immune response to an stimuli. So that made us to believe, and that we published that to say that exercise controls or stabilizes the immune system. So definitely a regular physical activity, regular physical exercises helps in stabilizing the immune system. We call it as a well-stabilized immune response. That's what it comes. It definitely helps. And we also found a connection of how this immune system downplaying or bringing down helps even in the controlling of the glucose control. I think our co-panelist Ambrish was also one of the person who contributed in that study, where we could see that because of regular exercise, the TNF and all these things will come down, as a consequence of which even the glucose mechanism is controlled. So we always used to think that these are two unconnected. I mean, it reasonably now, it is a point of fact we need to remember that a regular physical activity and exercises tones down and stabilizes an immune response.
True.
Thank you, sir. My next question is to Dr. Ambrish. Sir, how does exercise affect muscle tone? How does it affect the muscle strength and other systems like respiratory, cardiovascular system? Sir, how does it affect?
The question, though, it goes towards the the systems like respiratory system, cardiovascular system. I would first like to answer that exercise performed on a regular basis, as Dr. Chandrasekhar was telling just now, will first of all boost positivity and positive attitude. That is what has been found out. And having said that, in the present circumstances, and the coming to organs like the lungs, there are certain parts of the lungs which are not at all used in our day-to-day lives. So all parts of the lungs, like the apex of the lungs, which has a very good capacity for perfusion, the oxygen to get into the body, the capacity is highest in the apex of the lungs. That opens up during exercise, and when we exert ourselves, we are exerting at the physical level, not as a mental stress. That is another important thing. When Dr. Chandrasekhar was telling about tumor necrosis factor alpha and such stress markers or inflammatory markers, these markers also increase when there is a mental stress. This has been found out by later researchers. Now the present context is that we have to boost our immune system, and various parts of the human body, like the lungs I gave as an example, and boost our positivity and our body's capacity to stay fit. So the heart, you asked about the cardiovascular system. The heart's ability to pump out blood increases. For each pump of the heart, the blood that is sent out will become more in a person who exercises regularly. And Dr. Chandrasekhar used the word stabilizing. The other word that he was mentioning when I was working as a researcher under him was cushioning effect. That really made an impact on my thinking as a person who should exercise regularly. All of us, we do not exercise regularly. Let us accept that fact. It is never too late to start. So it cushions the effect of the impact of suddenly we need to run or do some chores or get into a mental stress. The body is ready and has a cushion when we do regular exercises on a daily basis. The muscle tone, yes, in one of your the first part of your question, it improves like anything. The flabby skin goes away, the muscle strength improves, the muscle fibers multiply in a normal way, physiological way as we call it, and the person's ability to stay healthy and also feel healthy improves as the person exercises regularly. All parts of the body, all systems of the body, all organs of the body, the blood supply improves to those parts to which blood does not get supplied on a regular basis when we are sedentary. This is the take home message to the answer to this particular question, which is a very apt and important question, because we are growing where we should not be growing, like for example the abdomen and the buttocks, the pear-shaped appearance. All this is happening because of lack of exercise, and all the systems should grow in a physiological way or grow in a normal way and get the blood supply appropriately to have that cushioning or buffer effect, as was described in our research with Dr. Chandrasekhar as the guide. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. My next question is to Dr. Raj Kannan. Sir, is there any optimal exercise regime for our rheumatological patients? Is there any different exercise for rheumatoid arthritis, spondyloarthritis, or osteoarthritis patient?
Yes. See, there are two categories here. One is the general population. Other one is the patients with arthritis or other musculoskeletal problem. So to maintain the general overall well-being and fitness and basic strength and bone strength, you have to fulfill certain exercise in your day-to-day activities. Apart from that, people who are having ailments like knee pain, wrist pain, shoulder pain, they have to do certain exercise to fulfill their daily quota of that exercise to remain healthy. So for that, one should understand that there is something called FIT principle. For general population, we call it as FIT principle. Let me share it the slide here. You will know. The FIT principle stands for frequency, intensity, and time of the exercise and type of the exercise. We see here. Now, every exercise program should be tailor-made. That's one thing. But for general population, to get a general fitness, you have to follow this principle. At least 4 to 5 times in a week, you have to indulge in one or the other form of exercises. Okay, and the intensity should be at least 60% of your overall capacity. What is 60%? Don't get confused. It should be felt hard for you, not too hard, moderately hard. So if you can run your machine for 100% capacity, run your machine for 60% capacity, with which you will get optimal physiological benefits, optimal systemic and local muscular benefits. So the intensity should be like that. Whatever exercise you may do jogging, you may do swimming, you may do cycling, or even when you want to lift weights, or nowadays so many types of body weighted exercises like push-ups and pull-ups and lunges. So these are all wonderful exercises which can be done at the home. Still, you can remain healthy and maintain your muscle and the bone mass. And how long you should do the exercise? You should do at least 40 to 50 minutes in a day. If not at tested, at least cumulatively you can do. Some people with OAE, they say, doctor, I cannot walk more than 10 minutes. Fine. You walk 7 minutes or 8 minutes. When the pain stops, stop. Okay, maybe after 3 hours, 4 hours, you try walk again. Or you do upper body exercise. If you have knee problem, do upper body. There are hundreds of YouTube videos and pictures are available where you can do upper body exercise and still maintain your fitness without worsening your knee pain or your ankle pain. And what are the types of exercise you should do? So people are confused. Okay, should I do an aerobic form of exercise? Should I do only jogging? I'll be fine in my life. Some people think, I have to go to gym. I have to build my muscles, because some ladies want to tone up their muscles. They think that, okay, just by walking, cycling, I will not tone up the muscles. So I have to go to the gym to build muscle mass and tone up my muscle, lose my shabby abdomen, and so on. But no, to get optimal benefits, you have to have a right proportion of various things. Gone are those days when we thought aerobic was the best. Aerobic alone is not the best because you need to have some strength in your muscles as well. With aerobic exercise and with anaerobic exercise, anaerobics wins in terms of muscle mass, anaerobic wins in terms of bone mass. Okay, so we are nowadays prescribing the exercise with the right combination of aerobic and strength training. Strength means what? Anaerobic. Strength training, little bit of balance and coordination training if they are a little older population. And some people, as they get older, they lose flexibility, so we focus on the flexibility. So to answer your question, the exercise must be tailor-made because everybody is different. Okay, so if especially when they're coming to us with pains, okay, we have to look after the pain as well as we have to look after their overall fitness, as well as we have to look after the local contraindications. So many factors we need to consider, and then we give exercise. But in a general sense, somebody want to live healthily, follow this FIT principle 4 to 5 times in a week, move your muscles, with maybe a jogging, maybe a cycling, or whatever it may be, just get off your butt, move around. Okay, and intensity, don't just talk and walk, you should little pant when you walk. That's the right intensity. Okay, and whatever activity you do, it should be little hard for you. You should sweat. Okay, and time duration, like 40 to 50 minutes minimum you have to do in a day. And proportion, as I said, don't do every day. Some people are marathon maniacs, like they run. No, come on, build some muscles as well. Okay, build some flexibility too. So it should be a right proportion of both strength, endurance, as well as flexibility, and finally the balance. All right. So this is how the exercise should be prescribed to these patients, even to the general population. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. My next question is to Dr. Praveen. Sir, how does exercise help in pain management in rheumatological diseases, sir?
Exercise in rheumatological diseases, it improves the pain and also the stiffness. So by this, the mobility of the joint will be increased and the range of the motion will be increased. And they also found that they with the aerobic exercises, as sir has mentioned, there will be decrease in the systemic inflammation. Because as we know, this sir explained, Chandrasekhar sir, regarding TNF inhibitor, which is a pro-inflammatory. So these factors will be decreased with the exercises, and also there will be improving the insulin-like growth factor in the muscles. So these are the one which will protect from the further damage and also from the inflammation. And also their studies have been showed that with the exercises, endurance exercises or strengthening exercises, the integrity of the cartilage has been maintained. They also measured a comp, that is cartilage oligomatrix protein, that which shows that there is no degradation of the cartilages with the moderate to high intensity in, exercises in rheumatoid arthritis. Initially, there was a notion that if you do moderate to intense resistant exercises in a case of rheumatoid arthritis, there is possible that you might damage your cartilage. But the study which has been done by which is named as a rapid study showed that even after 2 years of exercise with the 1.5 hours of intensive program exercises, there was no decrease in the thickness of the cartilage. So, and also they found that there is no exacerbation of the disease per se with exercises. So exercise itself causes a decrease in this inflammatory cytokines and pro-inflammatory factors, decreasing the systemic inflammation and also reducing the progression of the disease and preventing further deformity, which leads to disability and also the physical decrease in the physical function. So ultimately, these are the one which leads to morbidity because the DMRs which will control the disease. But overall, general patient feel very inferior because of this pain, and they will also have a depression. So the physical exercises will increase, they relax their mind, and which will feel they will feel free, and overall the disease, the active physical function and the psychological well-being will be improved with the exercise. So there is scientific evidence that exercise controls the disease, which through all this mechanism, and it also controls the pain and improves the range of motion, and over the long term it decreases the disability and mortality. And one more thing, apart from the pain, it also decreases the other cardiovascular chances of the cardiovascular mortality, as I explained previously.
Thank you, sir. My next question is to Dr. Chandrasekhar. Sir, I had read an article recently which stated that people who did regular exercises had less severe COVID infections or their outcome was good. Is it true, sir?
Yeah, I mean, I also read through that paper. I mean, it's a very interesting paper which I did see. I mean, certainly, yes. Theoretically, as I mentioned in the very beginning, our own work which we had published quite long back, the cytokine response to an insult or an injury is lesser or adequate when the individual does a regular exercise. So if person is sedentary, usually the cytokine response is much more than what it is required. I think all of us most of us have read the newspapers, everything, that it is the cytokine storm which kills the patient rather than the virus per se. So why the cytokine storm occurs? I think it is logically simple that if the TNF response is more than what you expect, that's a point when the things come. So a regular exercise, a regular physical activity, who are physically very active, usually will have a very nicely balanced cytokine response against the virus. So he or she is less likely to develop into any of these diseases. And another most important point, I think all our previous speakers have said from the physiology perspective as well as from that, the comorbidities, the presence of a abnormal impaired glucose tolerance, cardiovascular resistance, and muscles and myo resistance, they're all much better. Also, the lung capacity is much better in an individual who does a regular exercise or physical activity. These are all going to have a buffer effect when the person gets infected. So more you have the buffer, more likely you can win the battle against the virus. So I think that observation was a very simple observation made by a group which they just took the patients who succumbed versus who were successful. They did find that the persons who have a good physical activity did very well with that. I mean, this gives us a clear message. The exercise and the physical activity makes a huge difference when it comes to the outcome. It's not just that. I mean, though it is not relevant to the question you asked, to draw your attention, there are several studies which they have done with reference to the elderly, especially in the people who are in nursing homes, especially in the Western countries. I mean, we don't have that problem currently in India. And also we have seen even in India, for that matter, we have seen our own generation of our parents. We have seen the people who are physically active, who are even active at their 70, do a walking of 30-45 minutes, and they endure the problem like even a myocardial infarction or infections. They win very easily, very well than a person who is otherwise sedentary. And even the study which clearly says that physically active elderlies will have a good quality of life even in their last end of the decades. So that should put us into a right point that I should be physically active. If my working doesn't allow for us to be physically active, make an habit of doing exercise to keep systems right in place. I mean, that's a right message that should help us.
Thank you, sir. My next question is to Dr. Ambrish. Sir, too much of anything is bad. Is over-exercise harmful for our health?
Too much of anything is bad. That is true. And what is true for one may not be true for another. That is also a true statement. So how to know how much I should exercise is depending on what level I am at today. Suppose I am, as Dr. Ambarish, totally sedentary, and tomorrow morning I suddenly attempt to walk 5 kilometers, then is it good or bad? Definitely it is bad. I have to build up and condition my body. So gradually, the person who is sedentary should go towards non-sedentary nature and build up and stay there. That is also very important, staying there. Like Dr. Chandrasekhar was telling and Dr. Kannan was telling, we need to do regular physical activity, but not just one fine day morning we try to reach the peak and go on to climb Mount Everest. That doesn't help. We have to build up gradually and then stay there and be physically active to 35 to 40 minutes. So that is what is the meaning of the statement, too much of anything is bad, regarding exercising. But having said that, once a person reaches that stage of exercising well, the person can decide to go further regarding building up muscles more, as Dr. Kannan was telling before. He may decide, but finally, what is it that is required is what Dr. Chandrasekhar was telling just now. We need to have a healthy, peaceful life, especially as we age. Day by day, we are aging, but let us age in a positive manner, building our muscles to the level that is required for us. All of us are not going to be marathoners. Let us understand that. We are what we are. We have to continue to do what work we do. So, depending on that, I would again repeat that yes, too much of anything is bad. We will continue to do within what is required for us, depending on, for example, let us make this general statement that 30 to 40 minutes of a walk per day, or a maximum of 1 hour walk per day, with a little bit of sweating and increase in heart rate. Please note this, the heart rate should increase to at least double for a minimum of 2 minutes. Keep this in mind. This is very important. Then you are at least trying to reach there sincerely. Okay? Then it is not too much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. My next question is to Dr. Praveen. Sir, in our institute, we tell all our patients to exercise regularly. So they ask us back, will exercise help in reducing the medicine? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, directly it will not help a patient to get rid of the medication, but they have to take the medication to control the disease. But in the indirect way, definitely it helps to control the systemic inflammation and also keep the mobility of the joint intact and also the range of motion, and also indirectly benefits the patient with decreasing the cardiovascular mortality and also decreasing the chances of being obese and related problem. So patients should understand that exercise alone will not help us to get off the medication. And there are also various few studies which are being done to show that patients who are getting exercises along with medication against the patient who are getting the medications only without any regular exercises. So they have showed that those who are getting the medications along with exercise, they are able to achieve the remission or control in the disease activity earlier compared to those patients who are taking only medication. As I previously told that the benefits of the exercises in terms of keeping the intact joint and also improving the physical and psychological well-being and also protecting the patient from the other extra articular manifestation of the disease. And especially in case of ankylosing spondylitis, where the patient will go for a fusion of the joint in the spines, that can be prevented by these exercises. Even the drugs we have been there are conflicting reports about the prevention of radiological progression in ankylosing spondylitis, but exercise definitely will prevents the fusion of the spine. So exercise is very important along with the medication. So once we achieve the remission with this help of both the medication and exercises, then we can consider for discontinuation of the medication depending upon the other parameters of the particular disease.
Thank you, sir. My next question is to Dr. Raj Kannan. Aging is a natural process, sir, but many of us wants to look young. Is there any exercise, age-specific exercises that you suggest us to do?
Yes, as a continuation of my previous answer, the same exercise regime should be even given for the older population. But before that, I want to mention here that we all know India is the #1 country with highest number of young population now. But there's a risk after 40 years that India will be having the most number of old population. I don't know what's going to happen to our country that time. So this managing old people is not easy. You know how USA and UK is suffering with this COVID, managing these old people. So is these people who didn't care when they were young. So don't think that the fitness and the strength and everything will come overnight. It's the way you lead your life. Okay, it's not about doing exercise 1 day, 2 day, and then you become healthy. No, you have to change your entire life, the lifestyle, your habits, and your commitment to certain exercises. That's the one that's going to change your overall health in a longer run. So on that regard, let me share my last slide here. For there is something called healthy aging. We call it as healthy aging for good longevity. Okay. Now let's mentally imagine how a typical old man will look like. He'll be having a stick. He'll be stooped front. He'll be walking slow. He'll be having poor balance. He may fall anytime, and if he falls, there could be a fracture, and he cannot run and catch a auto or a bus. So that's what a typical old people are. But there are now even whom I know that there are people who are above 70 still play tennis, still go to the badminton court. Did they get that overnight? No. Right from their young age, they have been playing, and then they had just carried on. They didn't realize that they got old. They still in their mind, they are still young. Okay, that's how the aging must happen. So what I say is, don't wait to become old and become fit and healthy. Start it now. When you are young, you just start just now, from now onwards. And then gradually you have it as a habit. Don't withdraw it at any point of time, whatever the circumstances are. So coming to the specific old age group, as I mentioned, they'll be stooped because after retirement, what they do, they sit at home, sit in the sofa, slouching in the sofa. The number of sitting hours increases. The more the number of hours they sit, the faster they go to the deathbed. Okay, so I tell them, don't sit as much as possible. Get up more and get up more on. Have a habit of going out, mingling with your friends. Have a club where you just indulge in some form of games or physical activities. So I will tell them, at least whenever you are sitting, sit straight, and every now and then get up, move on, so that when you become old or when you are in your old age, you don't stoop forward. The moment you stoop forward, gravity is pulling you further. You will be soon going to the gravity soon, one fine day. All right. So try to be against the gravity most of the time. And secondly, as you get old, you will be losing your joint flexibility and muscles will become stiff. So you have to have one or the other form of yoga or flexibility exercises. As I mentioned, there are a lot of plethora of information available in the internet. Just use it. Okay, one or the other form of yoga or stretching exercise you can do. And there's a test called sit and get up test. Now, you just ask the patient or ask the individual to sit on the floor and ask them to raise up. See how they raise up. You will know how long they will live. Okay, so that's a simple test that we tell. So people who sitting is a form of flexibility exercise. If they go to yoga class, the yoga master will teach butterfly stretch every day. If you sit on the ground every day and eat, you don't have to do that butterfly stretch in your yoga class. Okay, so have your lifestyle modified, where you sit, how you sit, whether you do stair climbing or not. I'm not asking you to climb 4 flights, 5 flights. Just every day, 5 steps, 6 steps. If you're old, fair enough. Just get up and get down. Get up, hold the railing. Get up, get down. Get up, get down. So that's a one form of stair climbing which builds muscle mass around your knee muscles, so you don't get victimized for OA knee or arthritis knee in the future. All right. So one or the other form of flexibility yoga you have to do to get the flexibility, and most importantly, you have to weight bear in your large joints. The people in old age, they are more vulnerable for osteoporosis. You all know that, and there's something called sarcopenia, which is nothing but the osteoporosis of the muscle is called as sarcopenia. Means the muscle will lose its mass. Okay, the muscle proteins will just wither out, and they become thin and small. They become thin and small as they get old because the muscle mass shrinks. Okay, so that will get improved only by strength training, not by aerobic exercise. You can be walking, still you can have sarcopenia because you need to build strength. So that strength training, you need to little focus. So I suggest them to hold the window grill and then little squat 10 times a day, morning and evening. squatting, that builds muscles, and little bit stair climbing, and sit and get up, and as much as possible, you try to be on the move. So these are the ways you impose weight on the femur and the tibia so that they don't undergo pathological fracture when you slip and fall on the bathroom, So weight bearing exercise is essential. Finally, the balance and coordination. Because of aging, there will be some neurodegeneration happens in the brain, so your reflexes will come down. So you may be in the risk of fall. So I tell them to do a little bit of balance exercise, like tandem walking, or standing and hold the window grill and stand on one leg, heel raise, and then walk on the toes, walk on the heels. So these all can be done very safely at home. Okay, if you do that as a everyday habit, then probably your balance and equilibrium will be maintained forever. So you don't fall in the bathroom. In my hospital, every week once somebody will come with a pathological fracture, with a fracture. We ask them, where did you fall down? In the bathroom. How old are you? 60, 70, like that. So it's a fall and over the vulnerable bone. So we need to improve the balance and coordination in those people. And finally, in order to get that aerobic fitness, to not die out of cardiac problem or to not succumb for the COVID or for any other respiratory problem, little bit of aerobic exercise you have to do. Like as I said, the principle what I told in the previous question, frequency, intensity, type, and type. So you have to have various proportion of all these exercises. Or if you play sports, nothing like that. Sports is the best where you get everything together, like balance and equilibrium, strength, endurance, agility, speed, everything you get just by playing badminton or just by playing tennis. But you need to start right now, so that when you become 60, you will still maintain it. That's how aged people should maintain their fitness. And don't think that you didn't do anything active in your young age. Even if you are at 60 now, and even now, if you want to start something, it's wonderful. Better late than never. Okay. Consult some physiotherapist or a doctor. Start somewhere, so that at least another 20 years, the quality of life will be good for you. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ambrish sir, you have a very special interest in yoga. I want to ask, how does yoga influence our health? Is it different from the routine exercises?
Dr. Kannan has partly answered my question, and to just reveal this fact to you, Dr. Chandrasekhar had worked with some scientists in Vyasa like Dr. Adhiraj HS, and he had already proved to a large extent that yoga is a little bit different from exercise. And I just took it forward and did some more research on that. What Dr. Chandrasekhar mentioned, I just want to tell before I answer this question, so that the answer is given properly. Dr. Chandrasekhar said about cytokine storm. Now, this cytokine storm, what he described is the problem in COVID, for example. Okay. Now, in different ways, Dr. Chandrasekhar and myself are explaining this to drive home this point. All right. So, one word that was used by Dr. Chandrasekhar was stabilization. I use the word buffer. Sir, Dr. Chandrasekhar used the word cushioning, or I used it. Another word I want to drive home is overreaction. Reaction is good. This I am talking in a layman's perspective. As a layman, we should react to circumstances. Should we overreact? No. The same thing applies for within us, and now that within is the cytokines like pro-inflammatory cytokines like tumor necrosis factor alpha. The army, the Indian army, let us say, is the soldiers. Indian army is the immune system, and let us say each soldier is a cytokines like tumor necrosis factor alpha, which helps in protecting by creating repair mechanisms like inflammation. But if the army comes inside the cities and says, no, I will rule, that is called overreaction. This is helped by mind-body techniques like yoga. In this part of the world, we call it as yoga. In other part of the world, they use mind-body technique or mindfulness-based technique, Tai Chi technique. So many names are there. But Everything said and done, yoga is the oldest form of mind-body technique. Exercise makes the body function more, like we were discussing before. Whereas yoga starts from the mind, balancing from the mental level to balance the cytokine levels and cushion its effect. Both yoga and exercise are complementary. I am using the words actions also. They are complementary. Okay, actions, they are complementary. They do not compete. Please understand this. Yoga and exercises are complementary. They help each other. They do not compete. So yoga helps, yes, but don't think if one does yoga, exercise is not necessary. Or if one does exercise, yoga will help to achieve the exercise better. For example, it improves the suppleness of the joints. It improves the muscular mobility, as Dr. Kannan was telling. And in yoga, we are not saying, we means the people who have worked on yoga. I am a medical practitioner, but I have worked on yoga to some extent. We are propounding that only three aspects: asana, pranayama, meditation. Only these three parts can be tried by using various YouTube channels also, and also do the exercises. Both help each other, and yoga definitely helps. This I have to drive home at this particular point of time. And given that fact that there are some people who say, oh, I do yoga, I don't have to do these exercises. Exercises is given the name Western, and yoga is given the name Eastern. No, let us not have this bias. Both help each other. They work in different ways. Yoga comes from the mental level to balance us and also increase the positivity, and exercise works from the cellular level at the physical level, and they help out each other. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. My last question, Chandrasekhar sir, today in this COVID times, social media is full of various immune boosters and all. Sir, what are your thoughts on this? Does these immune boosters help us in any way? Does it stabilize our immune system or it improves our immune system?
Actually, when you speak from immunologist's perspective or from the perspective of immunology, there is nothing called boosting the immune system. The immune system has a work to do, and it remains to continue to work to do. In immune system, we have two major defects, as we put it. Actually, one is underperformance or performance in a wrong directions. So what do we mean by that is, actually, if it works on a say external proteins for which it should not react, say for example a food particle or a pollen, we call it allergy or overreaction. Or if it works on self protein, we call it as autoimmune disease. Or if it hyperreacts, like what happens in COVID, it is going to cause a cytokine storm. So if that is the case, if I boost the immune system to overreact, then we are going to land in trouble. But there is no rule or no room or no terminology called immune boosters. We always talk of an immune stability, because what we require in an immune system is an apt, precise response to an infection. Apt, precise response to an infection is the one where an individual will be asymptomatic, gets an infection, and get rid of the infection. The only person who has aptly responded to a COVID infection, for that matter, any infection, is a one who was asymptomatic, because his body could get away from the virus even without making him to get the sense of that he has got an infection. So it has reacted so precisely. It's a sharp response against the viruses. So this immune boosting concept is vague. I mean, I don't agree with that immune boosting. Neither the drug, herb combinations, or whatever they are talking about, we are not a party to that, because it's theoretically and from the medicine perspective, it doesn't really work like that. As I said, if you do a good exercise, keep a good physical activity, keep a good mental balance, you have a stable immune system. A stable immune system neither underperform nor overperform. See, for us, what I need is, I don't want immune system to be boosted and overperform, not I want an immune system to underperform. It should be perfect and precise. If you talk of booster, what do we mean? It's going to overperform. If it overperform, what will end up are the cytokine storm. So it's overperforming than what it is required. It's a sort of exhaustive responses. So that being the case, there is no room. I think it's best we put a rest to the term called immune boosting. What we really need is a sort of immune stabilization, which is best achieved by the good exercises, good physical activity, and keeping the mind calm. So that all these things, I think we have, all our experts have explained: exercise, yoga, meditation, good physical activities, keeping mind calm is going to help. I mean, that's fair enough to handle the disease.
Thank you, sir. With this, I would like to conclude the session. It was definitely an eye-opener, and I'm sure all of us would have pledged to start exercising now on routine basis. I would like to thank Dr. Chandrasekhar, Dr. Amrish, Dr. Praveen, and Dr. Raj Kannan for your valuable time and important